Today, we're heading out into the stark beauty of the Judean desert, to a massive flat-topped mountain, a mountain that became the stage for one of history's most dramatic and, well, most debated last stands. This is the incredible story of the Siege of Masada, a tale of defiance, unbelievable engineering, and a final tragic act that has echoed for nearly 2,000 years. So picture this. You're a Roman soldier. For months, you've been part of this massive, relentless effort to take this fortress. You finally breach the walls. You storm in, expecting a bloody, desperate fight to the last man, but instead, you're met with this eerie, unsettling silence. According to the historian Josephus, what those soldiers found inside would become the stuff of legend, shocking the Roman world and leaving historians with a puzzle for the ages. And that's the big question, isn't it? That's the mystery we're really digging into today. To even begin to understand what could have possibly happened on that final, fateful night, we have to go back. We need to unravel the story from the beginning. How did almost 1,000 people end up on this remote rock in the first place? And what could have possibly driven them to their extraordinary end? To really get what happened at Masada, you have to understand that this wasn't the start of something. It was the brutal, fiery end. This last stand was the final glowing ember of a massive conflict that had already scorched the entire region, the First Jewish-Roman War. For years, a really, really bitter war had been tearing through Judea. It all kicked off in 66 AD, a huge rebellion against Roman rule. But the absolute turning point, the heartbreaker, came in 70 AD. That's when 60,000 Roman legionaries surrounded Jerusalem. After a horrific 5-month siege, the city fell, and its sacred Second Temple was burned to the ground. The heart of the rebellion was pretty much ripped out, but a few sparks still remained, flickering out there in the desert. So who were these people holding out on this mountaintop? They were known as the Sicarii. Now, the Sicarii were a radical offshoot of the Zealots, who were the most passionate opponents of Roman rule. They actually got their name from their weapon of choice, a small hidden dagger called a sica. These guys were the most hardcore, the most uncompromising of all the rebels. And after Jerusalem fell, about 960 of them, men, women, and children, found their way to Masada. For them, this place was the last little patch of free Judea left on earth. Okay, so let's talk about the location itself, because Masada wasn't just some random hill. It was a fortress, practically carved by nature and then perfected by a king. This place was designed to be unconquerable, and it was about to go head-to-head with the most powerful military machine in the entire world. I mean, if you want to talk about an underdog story, this is it. The mismatch was just staggering. On one side, you have Eleazar ben Yair leading fewer than 1,000 people. And remember, many of them were women and children. On the other side, you've got the Roman commander Lucius Flavius Silva, and he's leading the legendary Legio X Fretensis, the 10th Legion. These weren't just any soldiers, they were siege warfare specialists. With all their support staff, we're talking about 15,000 troops. It's just an unbelievable imbalance of power. And the reason the Romans had to bring the whole shebang was because Masada itself was a beast of a fortress. Imagine these sheer cliffs just dropping hundreds of meters straight down to the desert floor. The only way up was this one narrow, winding path called the Snake Path, which was super easy to defend. And on top of all that, King Herod the Great had kitted it out with palaces, bathhouses, and, this is the crucial part, absolutely enormous storerooms for food and massive cisterns to hold water. The people up there could have held out for years. So what do? If you can't starve them out, and you can't just climb the cliffs, how in the world do you take Masada? Well, for the Romans, the answer wasn't just about brute force. It was about methodical, relentless, and honestly kind of brilliant engineering. They decided that if they couldn't go up the mountain, they would just bring the ground up to the fortress. For the defenders watching below, this must have been a psychological nightmare. First things first, they had to totally isolate the place. Silva's legionaries got to work and built a complete siege wall all the way around the base of the mountain. This thing stretched for 11 kilometers. It made sure that no one could get in, and more importantly, that no one could get out. And to back up that wall, they built 8 fortified camps, all positioned with perfect strategic precision. The biggest one, Camp F, was Silva's own headquarters. Can you imagine being on top of Masada? You'd look down and see yourself completely encircled by the disciplined, orderly machine of the Roman army. Any shred of hope for escape or rescue was just gone. But all of that was just the opening act. The real masterpiece, the showstopper of Roman engineering, was the ramp. The engineers found a weak spot on the western side, a natural rocky spur. And right there, they started building a colossal assault ramp. Using thousands of Jewish prisoners and their own soldiers, they moved an estimated 500,000 tons of earth, rock, and timber. Just try to picture that, watching that man-made mountain slowly, day by day, crawling its way up towards your walls, an inescapable monument to Roman determination. This whole thing was classic Roman playbook, really. You can break it down into 4 terrifyingly methodical steps. Step 1, isolate the fortress. Check. Step 2, build that absolutely insane ramp, basically creating a mountain next to a mountain. Step 3, construct a massive 18-meter-tall siege tower, cover it in iron plates, and stick a huge battering ram inside. And finally, step 4, the grand finale. Push that monster up the ramp and just start smashing the walls. So after months and months of this monumental work, in the spring of 73 AD, the end was finally near. The Roman war machine was literally at the gate. And the final moments of this siege, well, they would become the most controversial and fiercely debated part of the entire story. You can just hear it, right? That constant thump, thump, thump of the battering ram against the stone. The defenders, in a last-ditch effort, built a second inner wall made of wood and earth. But the Romans just started hurling torches, and the whole thing went up in flames. As the sun started to set, a breach was finally opened. Now Silva, always the careful commander, decided to wait until dawn to storm the fortress. He wanted to avoid the chaos of a night battle. But for the people inside Masada, this meant they had only one night left. And this is where the story becomes a true historical mystery, because we have 2 completely different versions of what happened that night. The only written account we have comes from the historian Josephus. He tells this incredible story of Eleazar ben Yair giving a powerful speech, convincing his people to choose death over a life of slavery. According to Josephus, the men killed their own families, then each other, until only one man was left, who then took his own life. It's an incredible story. But modern archaeology throws a huge wrench in it. Excavations have only found the remains of about 28 people, not 960. And some of those remains were found mixed with pig bones, an animal forbidden by Jewish law. Plus, you have to ask, how could the few survivors Josephus mentions have perfectly remembered that long, eloquent speech? It leaves us with this massive question. Was it a heroic mass suicide, or were the defenders simply massacred by the Romans when dawn broke? So, regardless of what really happened on that last night, the story of Masada didn't end in 73 AD. Not even close. In the 20th century, the whole story was reborn. It transformed from an ancient tragedy into a powerful modern symbol. You see, for the early Zionist movement and later for the brand new state of Israel, Josephus's tale of heroic defiance was, well, it was perfect. This story of a small group of Jewish fighters holding out against a mighty empire became a foundational myth. It was a symbol of incredible courage, of sacrifice, and of the absolute determination to fight for freedom no matter the odds. And this idea, this transformation, is captured perfectly in a modern tradition. For decades, soldiers in the Israeli Defense Forces would climb to the top of that fortress to swear their oath of allegiance, and they would proclaim these powerful words, "Masada shall not fall again." The ancient battlefield became a modern pilgrimage site, weaving the story right into the fabric of modern Israeli identity. Okay, so let's tie all this together real quick. The Siege of Masada was the final brutal act of the First Jewish-Roman War. You had the small, outnumbered group of Sicarii rebels holding out against the full military and engineering might of Rome. They were in a nearly unbeatable fortress, but were ultimately defeated by that incredible Roman assault ramp. And the story of their final moments, the famous account of mass suicide, is seriously challenged by archaeology, leaving us with a mystery that endures to this day. And finally, that story has taken on a whole new life as a powerful and sometimes controversial modern symbol of national identity. Which leaves us with one last really important question to think about. The story of Masada, part history, part legend, is a perfect example of how we remember and retell the past. When a society chooses to elevate a story like this, to turn it into a myth, what does that choice tell us about our own values, our fears, and our hopes today? The echo from that silent fortress, almost 2,000 years ago, is still challenging us with that question.